Did you know that the cost of Etsy ads has doubled in 2025 alone? Like, actually, Etsy ads cost 2 times more this year compared to last year. Now, each year we spend six figures on Etsy ads across our multiple Etsy shops, and they've been extremely profitable for us. But there's been a huge change in 2025, and no one is talking about it. What's up, guys? I'm Connor, and I'm a full time Etsy seller that's done over $2 million in sales on Etsy. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you three huge updates to Etsy ads in 2025. By the way, make sure to stick around until the end of this video because I'll also be sharing our exact three-step Etsy ad strategy, including the most important metrics that even Etsy doesn't want you to know about. So, the first update Etsy recently made was to show the ROAS metric, or return on ad spend, on your Etsy ads dashboard. Now, in my opinion, this is a step in the right direction. But honestly, the way Etsy is showing it is so misleading to Etsy sellers. For example, if you hover over the question mark here, Etsy says that a ROAS of 1 means that you're breaking even with your ad spend, which couldn't be further from the truth. So let's break this down. First, we need to understand what return on ad spend, or ROAS, is. Basically, it's just the ratio of revenue generated divided by advertising dollars spent. Except Etsy doesn't include the shipping revenue collected in your Etsy ads dashboard. So the number is very misleading. Because of this, we're never looking at an apples to apples comparison. For example, last year we averaged a ROAS of 3.1, which seems good at face value. But when you look at our Etsy ad stats from 2025, however, we're averaging a ROAS of 2.5, which seems worse, right? But our profit margins are actually higher this year. We have been collecting a higher percentage of shipping on each order this year, making our Etsy ad stats look worse than they really are. To accurately analyze our ads and actually know if they're profitable, we need to normalize that number to include shipping collected and understand a metric called break-even return on ad spend, or break-even ROAS. We'll talk about that in detail later in this video. The second major update is that Etsy is now allowing you to customize your ad campaign strategy. So they now give you three options. The first is balanced, which should be the default for most sellers. Then they give you the option to either optimize by profits by selecting increase your return or optimize for increased orders. My opinion is that most Etsy sellers want to keep this setting on balanced because choosing the increase your order strategy seems like you are writing a blank check to Etsy to charge you crazy amounts of money for ads. This brings me to what I said at the beginning of this video. Etsy ads have already doubled in costs in 2025. So by clicking the increase your order strategy, you're basically signing up for even higher costs. So what do I mean Etsy ads have doubled in costs in 2025? Well, if I look at my Etsy ad stats from 2024 in one of our shops, and I'll just look at January through August for a fair comparison, I see that my cost per click was around 45 cents. To get this cost per click, I just took the ratio of the total spend divided by the total clicks. This means that I paid an average of 45 cents each time someone clicked on one of my advertised listings in 2024. Now, if I look over the same date range for 2025 and calculate my average cost per click by dividing the total spend by the total clicks, I get an average cost per click of 91 cents, which is more than double the cost per click of 2024. And this isn't just the case in our shops. We help dozens of clients analyze their Etsy ads each week. And so we get to see the behind the scenes in many shops. And from what we've seen, 91 cents is actually better than the average seller. We often see cost per clicks above $1, which is crazy. Now, why has this happened? The main reason it's happened is due to increased competition and maturity of the marketplace. And I want to be really clear when I say this because this isn't just an Etsy problem. Advertising costs always increase as competition increases. So you experience the same rising costs over time, no matter where you're advertising. The jump in cost per click prices has been extreme this year on Etsy. And that's why having a sound strategy is more important than ever before. So I'll be sharing my exact strategy later in this video. But for now, let's get to the third major Etsy ads update. So, the third major update is that Etsy appears to now be allowing you to turn off individual keywords when advertising listings. So, if you click into the detailed stats for your listing from your Etsy ads dashboard, you can see all the targeted keywords over the last 30 days. In the past, Etsy gave you this option to toggle off keywords that weren't relevant, but they clearly stated that it was just a test to gather data, meaning that by you turning off a keyword, it really did nothing. You would still show up for that keyword in search. Now, Etsy appears to have made this feature real. They clearly state if a keyword seems irrelevant, just turn it off and your ad will no longer show up for that keyword in search. Sounds amazing, right? Now we should have the freedom to turn off keywords that aren't relevant or that aren't converting to sales. Except if you hover over this question mark here, Etsy still has that same language stating that it's just a test. So for now, I'm personally not wasting my time turning off individual keywords. So that brings me to my Etsy ads strategy. I've broken this down into a 3-step process. Step 1 is to calculate our break-even ROAS for each product you sell. So let's take a moment to better understand break-even ROAS. Break-even ROAS is a metric that helps you understand when you break even on a sale. Your break-even ROAS will vary depending on your pricing structure and your cost of goods. To put it simply, break-even ROAS is calculated by taking the ratio of the total revenue from a sale and dividing it by the gross profit of that sale. Let's go through an example with Christmas ornaments. Now, let's assume we are selling Christmas ornaments for $12.99 and charging $5.99 in shipping. After accounting for the fulfillment cost, or the cost of goods sold, and Etsy fees, the break-even return on ad spend is 2.69. However, we still have one problem. Remember that Etsy doesn't include the shipping collected in our Etsy ads dashboard. We must normalize or adjust this number to account for that. So, after we adjust our break-even return on ad spend target, our new target break-even return on ad spend becomes 1.97. Remember, it's important to do this with each product you sell because the break-even return on ad spend target will change based on your pricing structure. By the way, guys, there's a link in the description so that you can download the break-even return on ad spend calculator that I'm showing here. The exact one that we use in our business so that you can start doing this today. Now, step 2 is to gather data. This is where we turn on our Etsy ads and have to patiently wait while we spend some money to gather enough data before making a decision to keep the ad running or to turn it off. If you're new to Etsy ads and may be unsure what your budget should be, I often recommend about 50 cents times the number of listings you'll be advertising. So if you have 100 listings, a good starting daily budget might be $50 per day. But don't worry, Etsy likely won't spend anywhere near this at first, and you'll only pay when real customers click on your advertised listings, so it just gives you some spending power. Once our ads are turned on, your listings will slowly start to get clicks, favorites, sales, and eventually reviews. This is why Etsy ads are so awesome. They help accelerate that ranking process on your new listings. But like we talked about, it's really important to monitor them closely, especially with the rising costs. So we need to establish some rules. And let me be clear that you should have your own rules here. This is your business and you need to be comfortable with what you are willing to spend. If you don't understand any part of Etsy ads, make sure to watch this video multiple times before you turn on ads. Because we price all our products to achieve around a 20% net profit, my rule is that I am willing to spend at least 1 times the cost of goods sold or 1 times the fulfillment cost for that item. So, for example, an ornament costs $10.29 to fulfill through our production partner, Inner Circle Prints. This means that I will let the ad run until it has spent at least $10. Remember, you should do this for each product you sell. So for more expensive products, you may let those ads spend a little more before making a decision. So that brings me to step 3, analyzing our data. Now that we have collected our data, we can start to make some educated decisions. Now that we know our break-even return on ad spend number for each product, we can go down the list of our listings that are being advertised. If our return on ad spend number is below the break-even return on ad spend target, and that listing has spent above our target spend, we turn the ad off. If the return on ad spend number is above the break-even return on ad spend target, and that listing has spent above our target spend, we keep that ad running. It's profitable and that's awesome. Now, if the listing hasn't spent enough, that's okay. We need to wait and allow it to continue to gather more data. My wife and I like to have a monthly Etsy ad review meeting where we scrub all of our ads in each of our shops using this exact process. It may seem overwhelming at first, but it's actually very simple and only takes a few minutes each month. One thing I would recommend when doing this is to always look over the longest time horizon you can. So always change your date range to as far back as possible so that you are looking at the most data. More data is better here because if you look at just a small window in time, you may end up turning off an ad that looks like it's performed poorly, but really over the course of a year, it's done very well. So that's our 3-step process. Finally, I wanted to give you guys one last tip. The most important metric there is, which is tacos, or total ACoS, or total advertising cost to spend. This is often expressed as a percentage and is just the ratio of the total advertising spend divided by the total revenue. You can quickly calculate this by going to your payment account in the finances section. So if I take my marketing spend, $63,000, and divide that by our total revenue for this year in one of our shops, $347,000, I get about 18%. We typically price our products assuming a tacos of 15 to 17%. So right now we are right on target. This means we will be taking home approximately the profits we estimated when we went through our pricing analysis. It's also important to note that this is only for the first part of the year. As we head into the Q4 season, conversion rates will double or triple or even more, meaning that our tacos will drop significantly, which is a good thing, likely closer to that 15% or even much lower, and our shop will become even more profitable. Now, always remember to keep a close eye on your tacos as it's the number one way to assess the health of your shop and quickly understand what your profits will be at the end of each month. So that wraps up this video. Don't forget to download that break-even return on ad spend calculator down in the description and be sure to leave a comment if this video was helpful.